Gordon. What really is there to say? Well, for one, he's a very annoying character to repair, and there are various reasons for this. In today's video, we won't be repairing all four of these guys. At least that's not the plan. Rather, I'm going to sort of attack them one by one, and I guess make it into a small mini-series. Now, I will say this. A bit of preface for these Gordons. Well, as you can see, three of them are your pretty bog standard TOMY Gordons. One of them, though, is of course not a TOMY Gordon. That is... Does this guy actually recognize when I point at something? No. Stop focusing. That is actually a talking Gordon, and it's in remarkably good condition. So I'd also like to mention these are, with the exception of this Gordon here, commission repairs. These are repairs people asked me to do. In fact, this one is one that one of my viewers might recognize because they sent it to me. Now, typically I only work on these kind of Gordons. That is the ones that are not yellowed. This is fairly faded, yellowed, whatever you like to call it. And that's because of plastic brittleness. I don't repair Gordons that are yellowed, typically because I am, of course, a seller of these. I repair these, I sell them. And I can't trust that a yellowed Gordon is going to hold up with any degree of play, or even for a collector with any degree of movement. I mean, they can move, the functions of the motor aren't affected by this, it's more just the durability of the external shell. If this falls off the track, if this is tossed in a box, I can't confirm that, not necessarily that you should be doing that, but I can't confirm that it's going to be able to stay together. Hell, I've had these that have been damaged in shipping. Anyway, I guess we'll get started. Which also reminds me of a certain... Must be a... I do own, actually, a talking Percy that I remember I leased out to someone. That was an interesting one. Now, I will start off with mine because I'm always more comfortable starting with something I'm more familiar with. This is probably a later one. I guess we'll see when we open up the engine. I'm going to try and hold it in such a way that you actually get to see what I'm doing. Now this guy shouldn't be brittle. He is still relatively intact. If they're going to fail, it's going to be here. And he's alright. Typically, if the plastic's going to fail, it's going to fail around the parts with the, how would you say, the pegs. And I'll show you off the pegs in a minute. We'll leave the tender for the time being. Slot that up. I believe Gordon's one of the characters, we can actually just undo it and then it'll all slot up. Okay, we have Axle. I have to resort to using the larger screwdriver here. Always a bit stressful doing that. There we go. Sometimes you can remove the face. Unfortunately, that's not the case here, which is sad because his face is actually fairly worn. I do have some spare faces. I'm not sure if I have any unyellowed. But you can tell on the inside, this whole component is actually in very, very good condition. Let's get to cleaning it up now. Now, someone actually commented on one of my videos going back a little bit. Actually, not didn't comment on a video, messaged me on Discord, saying they really enjoyed these sort of more, I guess, longer videos where it's less cut. But unfortunately for this one, I'm kind of going to probably cut it a bit. Mainly the soldering, which is something he commented on. But that's not necessarily because I'm trying to hide anything. I know that I've said that. People are going to think that. It's more just, I have been doing soldering on this desk for a very long time, and I'm never quite comfortable with it. I'm not going to show you much of what's around, but you see the power boards there. It's very dodgy, and I'm very concerned about fire, the risk of a fire. And I kind of want to be that guy who preaches what they do. My recommendation usually is not to solder indoors. And if you are going to solder indoors, try to make sure you do it in a well-ventilated space, you know, fire extinguisher nearby, or at least some sort of fire prevention thing. You know, I guess try to be smart. Smarter than me. I always say, I'm not going to say don't preach what you do, but I do want you to be smarter than me, because I don't pretend to be the smartest person in the room, so I guess don't be dumb. But that's a very terrible thing, a very terrible way of sort of telling anyone or teaching anyone anything. Because my idea of dumb and your idea of dumb might be very different. I don't know what this conversation is. I'm cleaning a Gordon, for God's sake. He's not too bad in here. They typically aren't terrible. Of course, it'll depend. Depend. That'll do. I have a toothbrush. But you know what? We're not going to use that. Something I say fairly often is you want to match the quality of components together, so that way when you put an item together, it doesn't look like it's all sort of mix-matched. It's not necessarily to hide anything, it's more a measure to save some of the better parts for the better conditioned models. However, because Gordon breaks all the damn time, because they always yellow, this rule does not apply to Gordon. In fact, I don't apply it to Gordon because it is always better to use a better part. Because ultimately, I have a lot of Gordon parts. And there's one that's actually rather decent. So we will be taking it from this Gordon. And it's just this component, because the buffer's broken. I'm not going to throw that out though. This Gordon's a lot better. But it is yellowed, and the tender is a bit broken. So we shall just rip this chassis component off. I also probably would have ripped the face off this one, but removing the faces on Gordon's is a bit of a challenge. That'll all come up. First we go in the scrap heap that's slowly building up over there. This one didn't actually crack, but the tender's fucked. Alright. Into the scrap pile you go. Okay. And now we have actually pretty damn decent running board. Give it a quick clean up. We're good to go. I don't actually know if this Gordon's still soldered in. I think he might be. Oh, if I trip there, there's the C. Okay. I just dropped a... Oh, there it is. Not necessarily right now, but we'll take this apart one more level and we'll have a look. Check out the wheel set. I'm terrible at organising these screws apparently. And that wheel set is cooked. Absolutely cooked. Okay. Luckily, I have lots of spares. The one advantage to Gordon being a character that is absolute garbage is that spares are absolutely everywhere. If I actually have that. I did just throw the axle. Oh no, I put it back in the box. I kind of figured from the way the axle was turning that it was kind of screwed. Might as well throw that in there actually. Yeah, I'm actually going to gut this from the other Gordon that I just took the chassis from. Have a look. That's better. That one's up. That one's intact. Now also on the floor. There we go. Simple as that. Rods are off. Move that out of the way. Now I'm just going to remove the wheel. There we go. Why I do that is just because it's easier to get the bit of the hair off. Usually. There we go. Big old hairball. Now I'm just going to focus on the other side. You know, I try not to get too close to the mic, but there isn't really much option here. This is cat hair. You can kind of tell. Otherwise, it's a pain in the ass. If you run these on a carpet, don't. Or at least be prepared to do fairly major servicing at some point. I mean, obviously, this hair is not good for the motor either. It's putting a lot of strain on it. I was going to say the best ones I see are the ones that don't have hair, but really the best ones I see are just the cleanest. I mean, I had a couple had a bell in that basically looked never used. I don't tend to show off those. The thing is, my YouTube channel is not necessarily the best for showing you what generally the condition of some of these are, because it's hard. Some will look, because I don't tend to show you the ones that look okay. This Gordon's relatively okay, but even then it's like had 3 or 4 different problems. I'd say at least 30% of the time I'm dealing with items that are pretty much fine. Mostly it's just, especially Trackmaster 2s. I mean, I'd say a fair few of the Trackmaster 2s I deal with are actually fairly decent. I just don't show them because, well, that wouldn't make a very interesting video. These make an interesting video just because they're fairly in-depth. They've got a lot of parts. I mean, the thing is, this is nothing new, of course. If you've never seen any of my other videos, I've talked at length about a lot of things. I try not to talk about the same thing multiple times, because then it's just getting repetitive, and all you're watching really is just me dismantling a different train. I mean, maybe this is interesting for that one person who messed up and has to put their train back together. For anyone out there wondering, do I have guides? Do I have... do I follow a guide? Do I follow something or what? Not like... Do I have like a procedure to put these back together? Do I have any of those documents? I don't actually. For anyone wondering. Simply because it's all just sort of in my head. You know? Occasionally I'll have to look up something just because I'm not entirely sure. But that's fairly rare. I mean, that's the thing. You repair enough of these. I don't even want to give a number for how many I've repaired now. A good metric might be go to my store. Every single item on my store that's motorized. And I mean every single one. They are all... I've all had my hand in them at some point or another. There might be one or two Trackmaster 2s that are like a year or two old that I opened up. Looked, honestly, totally fine. And I closed back up again. Simply because there's no point in me removing old grease, putting new grease on when the grease is like a year old. The item's barely been used. I mean, that's sort of the tragedy. A lot of these Trackmaster 2s I get in, they just don't get used. Maybe that's a function of a lot of things. I mean, I have to wonder, how many of these are actually used? You know, and to what extent? But it's hard to tell. I mean, the operational lifespan of these motors is surprisingly long. It's not like they were designed to be short-lived. I mean, with 1.5 volts supplied, I've read articles saying these can last basically for, well, they can last, I think, about a day. I think the article, I should link the article at some point, or I should talk about it. This is an 08 Gordon, for anyone wondering. I just saw the code on the... But these should basically last a long time, and the reality is a lot of them I see are not broken in. You know? They're still relatively good. I mean, some I see are real shockers, and you can tell they've been run, and like... That's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean... The fact that they've actually had play is mildly impressive. Some people may say it's like a modernity thing, you know? Kids aren't playing with toys nearly as much as they used to. I think that's the kind of thing that maybe Leo would say. And I've got nothing against Leo. But I have to wonder if this is a new revelation. I mean... Video games came onto the scene. I don't want to go into this conversation because I'm not really an expert, you know? And I can't really give a mildly insightful opinion. I can only really say what I observe, and that's just sort of... At least in my generation, which my generation grew up with these. I mean, we were still really... Especially the kids around 2000 to probably about 04 really grew up around the Tomys. And then obviously Trackmaster came after, and that's pretty similar. And I frankly don't remember playing with these nearly that much. It just didn't really happen. I think a lot of the people who buy them now are a lot older and sort of maybe have nostalgia for them. Maybe they just see it as a brand to collect for their kids. People collect Tomys for very different reasons. There was a point to all this, wasn't there? I hope there was. I tend to go on these tangents even with my friends and about random shit and then kind of forget what the point was. Ah, yes, where? I guess what I'm trying to get at is... I think we're a bit rose-tinted about the whole Tomy thing, and I think to an extent we didn't play with these nearly as much as we think we did. I mean, in some people's cases, I'll say granted, they probably did. I mean, some people really enjoyed their Tomys and have really fond memories. I'm not one of them, and I don't know whether that's too generalized or not, or it's just me being me, I guess. I mean, I was always a TWR guy, so I guess I can't really say anything. I actually feel bad for all the TWR people watching this channel, because, like, I sort of went way off to the other end. I barely make TWR videos, but that's mainly because so many people are doing it now. You know, so many people can do it far better than I can. The last TWR, and the thing is, they just don't go very well. I mean, the last TWR video I did was on what I think is one of the coolest and just stupidest sets ever made, and it got barely any views. And it sort of made me go, huh, people don't really care. Then I do one of these repairs, which I think is rather dull, actually. To anyone still watching, hi. And they get like 300 views, and it's like, well... I think that's just because a lot of the TWR YouTubers have been on the scene for a long time. And there's not really like what I could call like this old guard there. It's not like they're just a bunch of old people. There's a lot of fresh faces. The TWR community always seems to be growing. And it always seems to be... The TWR community always seems to be a separate entity, almost. And I think that's why it always garners criticism. Some of it very, very fair. I think the whole TWRC is dumb. Hence why, I mean, no one's ever asked me to join it. I've never said I've wanted to join. In fact, I've actively said I kind of despise the thing. I don't think it needs to be its own separate entity. But that's just my personal opinion. If you're part of it, I mean, it's being part of a group, isn't it? And that's just sort of what some people need. And, you know, that's fair. I don't really know what I'm saying. I guess just sort of I let people be. Which is not actually a very good position to take if you're trying to be popular. I'm not really sure. Alright, I should really stop rambling and talk about what's actually going on here. Is that dirt? Yeah. I'm just sort of cleaning. I know they're a bit off camera and I apologise. I am just sort of cleaning up these halves of the Gordon's chassis. I'll also say I lucked out with the motor. Usually this is soldered in on this sort of period, but they're wildly inconsistent. I think these just sometimes get it, sometimes don't. It's just sort of the way it goes. I honestly prefer it when they don't, because it doesn't need to be soldered. And typically I don't resolder it, unless I've got the soldering iron there, and it's like, may as well. Okay, let's get this motor opened up, because there's clearly something a bit off with it. Trying not to destroy that connection. Sorry, you can see literally nothing but my hand. Okay, that's not a good sound. Sorry, this is actually fairly complicated. There we go. I don't know, maybe my rambling here, I kind of feel like I'm... It kind of feels like to me this is like a... this is a very, very niche reference, and I apologize. It's kind of like what Markiplier kind of did in those Five Nights at Fuckboys videos. You go, what? Five Nights at Fuckboys? Yeah, he did a series on that a while back, and I actually really like that series. It feels very genuine in it, and you know... Maybe it's the effect of alcohol. I'm never going to repair one of these drunk for you guys, though, because that is a dumb idea. Okay. This is sort of a good indicator. Actually, this is a fairly well-used one. You can sort of tell because there's a lot of gunk on the... I think that's the commutator. Just going to clean it off. And that's actually a really good tell as well, because even after I've cleaned it off, there's actually still... fair amount of gunk. You can see sort of that's all baked in. It sort of tells me that this was fairly well used. But it's one of those things where you just notice things. And you know, it's corrosion damage that gets these. And corrosion damage is more an indicator that they just haven't been used. Corrosion damage is just sort of an indicator that people don't give a shite. And you know... If you think, oh, I'm going to get angry at people for leaving batteries in them, I'm not. I mean, they're toys. At the end of the day, they are still... I guess it's a very hard question. Are they still toys? And that gets into more to the debate of, are things changing? I mean, are video games still toys? I think a lot of people would argue no. And what is a toy, what isn't a toy? That's a whole other debate. And this whole argument's just kind of one where it comes down to a human's... desire to, I guess, categorize it. Again, we need a better person than me. I think that's the whole point of collecting. I mean, collecting is not necessarily a concrete idea. And why we do it as a species is not exactly concrete either. We're really getting into existentialism here. Should explain what this is. This is a brass pencil. A very interesting tool. It's like a fiberglass pencil, but I think it's a bit more abrasive. I used to use a fiberglass pencil, but my issues with it was it just left a bunch of shavings everywhere. This still leaves some shavings, but they're a lot... It's not exactly that fine. So it's a bit better. It's never going to be perfect, but it's a lot better. Might give it a little bit of an alcohol clean. I think that's why so many of these I do still like work really, really well after I've cleaned them up, because the issue is mainly just servicing. It's not actually because like the motor's worn out. Typically that just doesn't seem to be the case. It's why when people say, oh, the motor, I need to replace the motor, I need to replace... Have you considered trying everything around the motor? Because I get a great turn of speed, even out of ones that are a bit worn like this. This is what I consider worn. And I can tell you right now, this kind of damage, I see maybe 1 in 10 engines. I can tell this Gordon's been used. It's been run around a layout a lot. Not that it's been, like, worn on the outside. I mean, like, we had that Henry the other day. In fact, that was a live stream. The Henry I don't even think looked this bad on the inside. And that was a painted face Henry. That externally looked pretty bad. And that's just because sometimes these are just run without batteries. It's less... Yeah. That's why people say, oh, it runs bad because the motor's bad. That's just not true. Or at least, I doubt it's true. Is replacing the motor going to improve their performance? Again, depends. Some people put super fast motors in them. I don't know how I feel about that necessarily. People just replace the motor outright. Again, my issue is this is actually a great mentality I have with everything, really. It's just, I'm not sure about those motors. I can look inside these, I can sort of know what's up with them. I can sort of look at them and go, okay, that's worn, it's going to affect performance this way. I can sort of, I guess, know. And, you know, with a new motor, I've bought some new motors in the past for, of all things, Wooden Railway. And I just wasn't happy with them, but they seemed to be highly recommended, and maybe it was a component problem, and you're better off looking at problems surrounding than just going, it's the motor. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I mean, I probably know more than some people, but less than others. Where's that glue? Well, I'll sort of leave that floating there. Alright. Basically what I'm saying is, I think I need an analogy for this. If your laptop starts running hot, you're not necessarily going to say, oh, the CPU needs to be replaced. Like, maybe that's the case. Maybe the CPU's gone bad. I'm not great at computers. I'm just making a guess. Or maybe it's just the fan. Or maybe the wire to the fan's broken. Or maybe there's a bunch of dust in the computer and it needs to be cleaned up. It's like maybe it could be. Like, it could be the fan. It could also be a number of other things around the fan. It's like you don't want to necessarily... It could be the CPU, it could be the other things around the CPU. You don't necessarily want to be going to what the most expensive part is and going, I'll fix that first. Clean it up, more thermal grease, see what happens. Because it could be it's not conducting thermally. It could be that it's... causing, yeah, a bad analogy. Kind of decent, actually. So, I'll also say that I'm planning not to do too many more of these videos. I'm going to try and just make this like a live stream kind of thing. Because that's fun. And, you know, I feel like it's better if I've got people to bounce off. Instead of just going on rambling rants about modernity. Because as fun as it is for that one or two people still watching this part of the video, I should also put this back in frame. It's not actually going to be that fascinating for everyone else watching, unfortunately. You might ask also why I don't do like reviews or anything. And you know, the reason I don't do reviews is actually rather simple. They've all been done before. I did reviews early off in my YouTube thing. I think they're not even up anymore. I think literally the first video I did was a review on the Crosby cargo station. I think the Crosby truck and the Top Hat's car. And that was just because that was literally all I had on hand at the time. But those kind of videos have been done before. The only thing I can really bring new to the table is maybe look at codes. But code history is not really something people are deeply fascinated in. Or maybe because you're watching my channel, you are deeply fascinated in it. In that case, welcome to the very small limited club. But well, I could do could do my character card collection again. I mean, someone commented recently on one of my posts asking about that, and I said, yeah, I've been busy, and that's sort of half the truth. I mean, these things take up time. Half, I am actually still waiting on cards. The problem is that's a terrible mentality to get into. Is, oh, I'm waiting on cards, so I'll do it another time. Oh, but there's one or two more cards still coming in. So, I may as well wait a little bit longer. Oh, there's one or two, and then you end up with like 60 cards, 70 cards to do, and you're like, ugh, shit. I know I did do my full collection going back a while, but we're going back like a while, and I've gotten some in the meantime, and I think these are all the same size. It might just be the James one that's got a shorter one. I'll just use this one. No, I actually don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if the batteries, if the wires are still connected in the tender. I'm not actually sure why it wasn't running before. Maybe just it was fairly dirty in there. That's probably enough grease. Now I just got to fish the spring out. Oh. Sorry, it's my phone going off on my desk. Or my old phone. Whose screen shattered because I was a moron at work. So, it just gets to sit there, occasionally going off. Right, I guess we'll give this a shot in a sec. Which we would do if I put the switch in, which I did not. Isn't it a mechanics rule? You always forget something. And it's always frustrating every time, because it's a part you really should have remembered. Thank God I don't have to rewire anything today. Oh my God. Well, not necessarily out of the woods yet, but... I'm actually just going to unscrew this for a sec. Just kind of want to put this blue wire where it's meant to go. I'm pretty inconsistent on that, but it is actually meant to slip in. Just behind here. Just give me a second to realign this red wire properly. I think I messed it up. There we go. Alright, let's get it together before it all falls to pieces. It's sort of my mentality with every single one of these. There's only my walls. I'm gonna go get the rest of these parts for these, and I will be back in a minute. And we are back. I just went and got the traction tires, so I didn't have to do that on camera. Let's get the rest of this Gordon back together. Because it's ridiculous. I have 8... Also, there's a bit of noise. There's a bit of construction work going on outside. That's what I went to go check on. I did actually want to go... I do actually have, a shitload of express coaches, for anyone wondering. That's kind of got to go somewhere, doesn't it? I believe Gordon's a bit weird. I think he just has a weight just floating around in here somewhere. Does it go like that? It's kind of weird. He did just have a weight floating. Doesn't seem right. Yeah, we're not going to put that in. I think that's an error. So we're just going to go, we're going to run with the 2 weights today. There should be a weight behind the face anyway, so that should be fine. Now we're going to put this back in. Then we're going to put these all back in. That goes there. That there. That there. Keep the wires out of the way. And run a plate. That should all snap down very nicely. Which it does. Screw 1. Screw 2. It's not quite as snapped down as I'd like it to be. Oh, it's just because the... There we go. Don't want to over tighten, especially on a Gordon. That little bit of crusty noise you get, that's just because there's probably a little bit of dirt in the grooves that it didn't get out, or couldn't get out, I should say. It's a bit annoying. But ultimately, it's not affecting the movement in any feasible way. It's just mildly annoying to me. And, well, there you have it. A bit of a rarity. That'll be going up on my store because I don't tend to actually be able to repair many of these. But a working Gordon. Yeah, it's mildly comical. Anyway, an actually working Gordon. Again, I apologize for the noise. So I said this will be up on my store probably relatively soon. I am planning to go away for a few weeks, so everything might be a bit on hold. I did put that in the community post. But I might try and get this up before then. Who knows? Either way, thank you all very much for watching. The other 3 Gordons, I might not film a video on this guy. There isn't much more to say. This guy's definitely getting a video, and so is this guy. So thank you very much for watching, and I need to get a battery cover.